Hello and welcome. My name is Brett Siders. I'm an ELT education consultant. Maybe some of you have joined me before for these webinars. Today we're going to be looking at our Interactive Science Plus. Now, last week there was a webinar put out where we were looking at Interactive Science, which is the kind of beginner book. These Plus books are a little bit more advanced, and we'll be looking at those now. But since they're both interactive science and using similar theories, you might see some of the activities that you did from last week. But it's a different book, so we have a different viewpoint. But I believe this book, it's what it says right there. We are using science to teach English, but at the same time, we're using English to teach science. A little bit about me. For those of you who've been on previous webinars, you've probably seen this slide many, many times, but for those of you who are new and have not been introduced to me yet, I've worked in children's education for a long time, over 18 years now. I've been working as a teacher trainer within the ESL, EFL fields because I've done it overseas in China and Korea, a little bit in Mexico, but then also I've done ESL education within the United States. My background is educational psychology. I did not go the traditional teacher's route. I was far more curious about the psychological understanding of learning and memory. How do we learn? And that's what's moved me into my current academic pursuits, which is learning sciences, which is looking at new ways of learning within the 21st century, and never has it been more relevant than it is now. And we're going to be looking at how we have to make changes for our new online learning. So today, I kind of want to briefly go over three kind of concepts. Last week, I had introduced and discussed Clil. I just want to review that because it's a core theory with this book. Anytime you teach a subject matter using a different language, that's Clil. But also I want to introduce a flipped classroom. A flipped classroom, someone just said they were very interested in psychology, and for you, I would love to get together and chat about that. But continuing what I was saying, we'll be looking at Clil and also a flipped classroom. And now, maybe some of you have heard of flipped classroom before. I mean, I've said it before, education has so many new theories coming out. I swear every year there's a new theory and, oh, we should apply this. And this is like the new formula. It's the magic formula. It'll make your classes wonderful. And, you know, these theories, some stay, but most come and go. But flipped classroom, it's kind of one that came and went a bit. But I believe now that during this pandemic and with our changing views of education, we should probably rethink a flipped classroom. So I want to discuss that a little bit and how we can apply that to the Interactive Science Plus book. We'll also be looking at some kind of task-based learning activities and how that's incorporated with the book. And then, of course, also we'll just be diving into the Interactive Science Plus book. Okay. So what is Clil? What is Clil? I've discussed it before. If it's new to you, it is considered content and language integrated learning. It's, in my mind, the simplest way to put it is you're teaching a subject matter, science, social studies, history, mathematics, but you're teaching it in the second language. And so really, it's just a form of language immersion. And I would say we often see this in universities where if maybe they have English as a standard or Spanish as a standard, that students have to come in, take their courses in their second language. What Clil's trying to do, it's trying to get that, get kids familiar with it at a younger age. But really the core of it is it's using English naturally. We're not just studying English like a linguist. We're using the language to communicate about science, mathematics, social studies. So that's where its value comes in. Now, some of you might remember this from last week, but I want to review it. I think this will be a great opportunity to review. Why? Why should we use content and language integrated? Why should we use a book like Interactive Science? If you were here with me last week or you've seen the webinar, please, who remembers? What are some of the good reasons why we should use content language integrated learning? So please, in the chats right now, feel free. Why? Why do you think this is a good idea? Why is it good to teach a subject matter, social studies, science, mathematics, in a second language? What are the benefits of that? Anybody think? Does anybody want to share? I see one person, thank you. To make it meaningful, absolutely. And there's also actually key details that we need to remember about it. I found this piece of information fascinating. Now, intuitively, I would think, okay, this will develop the second language, right? If I learn about science using my second language, it's going to improve my second language. But what research actually shows is, yes, it improves the second language, but it also helps develop your first language, your native language. That was a really revealing piece of information, piece of data from the research, that actually your language skills in both your languages will get better. And a key thing, and we're going to see this especially with the Interactive Science Plus book, it promotes new vocabulary, and not just new vocabulary, but relevant vocabulary, right? This is vocabulary related to science. It's vocabulary related to mathematics. So it's stuff they'll use in that field. And it builds target language, right? You're focusing on the language related to that subject matter, not just general vocabulary like we kind of do in our younger English classes. Another thing it does, and I think this is important in a more connected world, we are now more connected than ever before in human history. Look at this, we are from around the world, all connected and talking to each other and interacting. And it's only going to get more in the future. So one thing that this does is it helps teach intercultural competence. It helps students who might not be able to go and travel and see the world, it helps them learn more about the world. And if they do go to higher education, obviously we know many universities are incorporating this now, where many students will learn subject materials in their second language. And I've saw some people put it in the chat. This is the first thing, I know I put it last year, but it's the first thing I think of too. It requires students to use the target language more naturally. And that's the key thing here. We're trying to create these events in the classroom where students can use the language authentically, naturally, so they're not sounding like robots. So with the two books, we had, last week we looked at the Interactive Science, which was for the lower primary students, and we saw how that was related to science activities, right? We had the different kind of projects you could do. You know, a science activity I think was every about 2 units. But with Interactive Science Plus, it moves more into inquiry and discussion. We'll see that a lot. I mean, questions, asking the students questions, having the students ask you questions is so important. And so one thing I think about the Interactive Science Plus book is that it's inquiry and discussion focused. Now, we'll be looking specifically at the Interactive Science Plus book. This is for the upper primary students, and it includes all the things, lesson plans, teacher's manual, student app, and it's definitely, and you'll see it when we explore the book, higher level vocabulary focused. And this is true for the regular Interactive Science book and also the Plus book. Each unit is designed to be 3 lessons. I'll say that again, each unit has 3 lessons. So you can, from one unit, get 3 different class periods out of that one unit if you want to. And as I've mentioned, that for all interactive science, they provide the lesson plans. And as you can see here, that's just so much work someone has put into designing all these lessons. I believe the lessons are all for an hour-long class period. So if you have an hour-long class period, I would recommend just using these lesson plans. All the materials there, the extra resources, what to do. It's incredibly useful. And I'm just amazed because, you know, you can get so much out of this book. And that's important because I think sometimes we try to, I've noticed teachers they have to rush through their book or they cover the material just a little bit. But this book is designed to where you really explore each unit deeply. Something I thought that was very interesting, and I actually kind of want to give a round of applause to the book publishers on this one. You know, this book, of course, is the Interactive Science Plus 2nd edition. And I was curious about what were the differences from the 1st edition to the 2nd edition. And I think they made really good changes here because the 1st edition was actually called Interactive Science Reading Plus. And it was reading focus. So that meant there's less interaction, more writing, which I'm not critiquing, but it was far more of a reading book. But now with the 2nd edition, they've included, and I think this is very valuable. This is what I would want in my classroom, where it's a 4-skill focus. We're not just focusing on reading and writing. We have reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And so there's activities in the 2nd edition that incorporate those 4 skills. And of course, one reason it does that is this book is far more focused on questions and discussions, truly interacting with your students. So I think that was like major improvements they made from the 1st edition. And I think one reason they did that, I've mentioned this before, is to resolve a common criticism of teaching and learning. And it's been said in the United States, I've heard it's been said in Europe, I have heard teachers talk about it in Mexico, that, and I would say it's probably around the world, that we just cover so much content with the students. What ends up happening is we only are able to touch the surface a little bit. We can never dive deeply into a subject matter because we don't have the time. We got to move on. I did unit 1, I got to go to unit 2. So there's this expression in America that's called a mile wide and an inch deep. We just cover all this material, but we don't really have a deeper understanding of it. I joke with my international friends, of course. I say, you know, it's a kilometer wide and a centimeter deep, just to be international. I know America's the only country that uses this system of measurement. It's silly. Well, I think one other country does, but I can't remember what. But that's the key point here, is that we kind of want to take a little bit more time with the units. We want to delve a little bit more deeper so that when the class is over, the students will retain some of that information. So now I want to discuss briefly what a flipped classroom is. And a flipped classroom, it came about by teachers and researchers having to rethink how technology is used in the classroom and how technology supplements the traditional class lesson. And also, a flipped classroom did something else. It rethought, how do we use our classroom time? When our students come in, if we have them for an hour, what exactly are we doing with that time? And I think these were good questions to ask. And I want to ask you something. And I knew in making this question, this is going to be a difficult question to answer through a chat. But I want to ask you, before we talk more about a flipped classroom, what does a traditional lesson look like? So what is a traditional lesson? What makes a traditional lesson? Not a flipped lesson, a traditional lesson. So what I mean by that is, in a traditional lesson, how is content delivered to the students? How do we get the knowledge to the students? What do we do? So another way I'm asking is, what does a lesson look like? I would love to be able to talk to you in person on this, but because it's this webinar, we're not able to do that. So please, in the chat, take a minute or so and think about it. But how do we deliver knowledge to our students? What do we do? I'm going to be worried here if I see no answers. Oh, thank goodness. Perfect. Yes, handouts, lecture, Blackboard. Very well done. That's, I would say, yeah. Yeah, nowadays it's very true. Nowadays it's teacher-centered. I wouldn't say nowadays, the traditional lesson was teacher-centered. Teacher has the knowledge, delivers it to the student. It's using an, what was the Latin term? Tabula rasa. Tabula rasa, it's the Latin term for blank slate. It's an old teaching theory that, oh, the student, they don't know anything. They're just a blank slate, right? A blank blackboard. And I need to give them all this new information and give that to them. Well, research has shown that that's not the truth. Students don't come in completely blank. They've had experiences at home, within their community, in other classes, and they're bringing that into the classroom. Old-fashioned school was tedious. Yes, it was. Routine was big for those old school traditionalists. Well, now that we understand what a traditional lesson looks like, which I guess I viewed it as student enters the classroom, maybe turns in homework from the previous lesson, or I maybe review the previous lesson, or I preview our lesson, and then I go into it and I teach the lesson. I have direct instruction, then we'll have some maybe review questions or comprehension checks. Then I assign homework, you go home and you do the homework at home. I think many people would agree that's technically how a traditional lesson has been done. The student enters the class not knowing what they're going to be doing. And I say that for a reason, because we're going to look at what the flipped classroom does. Traditional lessons, most of the time the student enters the class, puts their backpack down, they sit down, and they have no idea what they're going to be doing. And there's, I think research has shown that that kind of has a negative effect on the student's learning. So I want to show you what we can do with that. Okay, so I try to create this visual, and I hope it helps with what a flipped classroom is. So simply put, so what do they do in the different environments? Well, at school, there's direct instruction, right? That's usually what it is. It's the teacher instruction in some form of another. Maybe there's some review activities or some discussion questions, but instruction is done in the classroom at school. Now at home, that space is for traditional homework activities, right? Which are comprehension activities. Pardon me, I'm reading chats as I do this as well. But at home was traditional homework activities, comprehension check activities, and that's it. Then they would do that homework, bring it in, and that's really the end of the lesson. But what a flipped classroom wants to do is switch it, flip it. That literally is what it means, just flip. Like you flip from heads to toes, flip it. So what we're doing now is at home, we're actually getting the teacher instruction. We're getting the direct instruction. And at school, we're having more traditional homework activities, comprehension check activities. Oh, I see lots of information here. Thank you. And everyone, I think I should say this as well, because I see Language World, the publishers, keep talking about this. Please make sure everyone changes your chat setting to all panelists and all attendees, because otherwise maybe you're saying information that no one can see. I want to make sure everybody can hear your opinions. So please, one last time, change your chat setting to all panelists and all attendees, and then we'll be able to see what you're saying. Thank you. So to review again, At home now, we're getting the direct instruction, and at school, our time with the teacher is now doing these different activities. Now, why? Why would we do that? Why would we flip a classroom like that? Like, and also you might be thinking, wait a second, how does the teacher give instruction if the student is at home? Well, the reason we're doing this is that, and I'll get to the direct instruction part in a minute, but when it comes to the class time, now there's going to be more interaction. The class time is used for the students who they've gotten instruction already. They came into the classroom having some idea about the content, and now they're going to practice it. Maybe you have different handouts for them, you have comprehension checks, you can have discussion or inquiry questions, and they're doing it with teacher assistance. Also, and this was key, this incorporates multimedia into the learning process. So here's the answer to that question, right? How do we do direct instruction at home? Well, using videos, using the technology. And I'll go into that a little bit later on. Research has shown that using flipped classroom, it helps students who are struggling. And also interesting, it helps students who have very busy schedules, they've noticed, because now the student is kind of more centered in their own learning, right? The video is sent to the student, but then they review it. Now also, it matches new forms of learning in a digital world. Now, what does that mean? Well, I think it's a revelation, or it's completely new, I think, in human society, that, how can I say it? When I was a kid, I'm sure many of you are either my age or around my age, maybe much younger. I don't mean to offend anybody. But if we wanted to know something, what did we do when we were kids? Pre-internet, that's what I mean, pre-internet. You would go to the library, right? Maybe you had encyclopedias in your home, or you went to the library and they had encyclopedias there. That's the only place you could get information. Either that or an expert, someone who is already knowledgeable in that area. But that world is old now. That's an outdated way of learning. Now we have the information at our fingertips, and not just the internet, especially YouTube. And that's one way many people are learning to learn now. And I don't mean just YouTube, but also Khan Academy, and I can't think of any other names, also other forms of online learning. And someone said it catches the student's attention. Absolutely. So many students now are used to using some form of digital media to learn something. I mean, it's very common. It's on their tablets, it's on their laptops, it's on their phones. It's becoming the new way. I know many people criticize it. They think maybe there's too much digital time, but whether we like it or not, the YouTube and getting information off the internet has changed how people learn. One of my friends, and I'm not even exaggerating this, I was talking about, hey, you can make anything if you find the right YouTube video. And he literally made an entire playground for his daughter only from a YouTube video. And it was amazing. He watched the video, watched it again. Some expert had showed how to make a playground, and they put it on YouTube, and that information was there. That could have never been done in the past. So we're having to realize that now the future generations, this is how they're going to be learning. If an idea or a subject matter comes in their head, boom, they're going to either Google it or they're going to go to YouTube and watch a video about it. So what Flipped Classroom wants to do is, let's make the classroom learning situation similar to that. And very good. Someone had just pointed out, and I will discuss this later, being careful about the videos you choose. Of course, on YouTube, there's so many different videos. You can't just choose randomly. You need to watch it. And like this, Rocio said, the importance of editing. And I'd also say where you're getting your videos from. So the basics to a flip. Now there are a lot of different stages, but I want to look at just the basics because many times most people who used aspects of a flipped classroom or flipped lesson, they're not making the whole class change. Maybe they're just using one lesson and flipping it. So the key is, and I think this is one of the biggest key, is using a short video, and it's short is emphasized here because I think from the research in this, it's about like every grade level, it's about 8 to 10 minutes. So we're talking pretty short videos, and if it's even younger, even shorter videos. And they actually said it's better to have 2 short videos instead of 1 long video. But your video, the point of it is direct instruction. Now, when flipped classrooms originally came out, when the ideas were first being discussed, the focus at the time was you, the teacher, makes your video. So you, the teacher, will actually record yourself, record your lesson, right? About an 8 to 10 minute lesson. The goal being, what's the outcome? What do you want the students to learn? And that's how you make your video. Well, so continuing where I left off, the core idea of making the video was that the teacher does it, that the teacher knows what they want the students to know. They know what content needs to be delivered in the video. And I highly recommend that. That is the best thing. You, the teacher, know what your student wants. However, I recommend going on YouTube and searching. There's so many different videos. And now, I think an important thing here is to remember that the video, it's like direct instruction. After direct instruction, the students can't produce the knowledge. They can't do that independently. They need assistance from the teacher, practice on activities. So I think many teachers go, well, how can a video teach them everything they need to know? And it doesn't. It just gives them an idea. It helps move their mind in the right direction. And what I've underlined it here is, obviously with many book series, there are video clips provided. So instead of having to go on YouTube and find your direct instruction or record your own video, you could use video clips from the content. And like I said, the interactive series has a wonderful app. Unfortunately, right now, I think there's maintenance being done on the site, so it's down currently. But on there, you can get all the videos, all the audio clips. I know if you have the book, there's like the hybrid CD where it has those videos too. I think that's one of the best ways, because if you assign that for the students to watch, you know they all have it because they'll all have that hybrid CD. A limitation, of course, is they need to have that technology at home in order to watch it. But I think now with more remote learning, kids have more access to the computers. But the biggest question people always have with the flipped classroom, they're like, wait a second, you're going to assign a video or some work to be done before class, but what happens if they don't watch the video? Then they're going to come to class and have no idea what's going on. And you're absolutely right. That is, I'd say, a criticism of the flipped classroom. So we have to say, how do we make sure the students are watching the videos before they come into class? Well, recommendations have been, that they take some type of notes. And traditionally, they could have just written it out. They could maybe draw pictures related to what they were watching in the video, or you might have them want to write 3 key words. Whatever you want to do to ensure that they watch the video, to show you that they watch the video. I think if you have the technological skill, like Google Docs, I know even Zoom has some chats that you can do, or like questions. I'd say Google Docs the best, right? And you can put 3 questions and the students have to answer them. Something to ensure that they are actually watching the video. And then what's the class time used for? Whether it's in person or online, that's then where you're doing far more reading, far more comprehension checks. You're having discussions about the reading, or maybe you're doing some task-based activities, but that maybe 10, 20, sometimes I've seen 30 minutes of direct instruction is being saved for outside the class. Now, when they're in the class with you, they're not just listening to your talk, they're interacting with you and you're working with them to help them on those activities. Now, I know we've talked a lot about this. I'm sure you've heard teaching theories, a million teaching theories, you know, they go in one ear and out the other. But I would say with this one, if you remember just one thing I've talked about a lot, it's providing some instruction or some information in a short video before the class. Because like I said before, otherwise most students are coming into the class with no knowledge about what they'll be doing. What I think these videos do, the word that we use in academia is we're priming. We're priming the students. That video doesn't mean they're becoming an expert. They're not mastering anything. They're not able to produce anything, but it's just getting their mind thinking, understanding some things. And when they go in that classroom, they'll have some idea of what's going on. So, I mean, with a flipped classroom, what it's really doing in my mind is it's getting the students better prepared. And it's having them come into the classroom and working with the teacher with more information. And also another thing to remember about this is that if you use a video, you can watch it more than once. Your lessons in class may be wonderful, but you know, maybe the student wasn't paying attention, they didn't focus, whatever. With a video that they can view it more than once, if need be. Now, some of you, if for that flipped classroom or flipped lesson seems a little challenging, I do want to say that most flipped classrooms have been used generally in junior high and high school and above. I've not seen many flipped activities or lessons for younger students. So if you're working with, you know, second, third, or fourth graders going, I don't think this can work, I would probably have to agree with you. That could be very challenging. Remember, this is Interactive Science Plus. It is for those higher level students who are going to be a little bit more older and a little bit more mature. One thing with this book, if I can tell you anything, is it is a question-focused book. Interactive Science is all about the WH questions. I'm going to show you the teacher guide in just a second, or just a piece of it. And it literally has tons of interactive questions, tons of discussion questions that you can start having a discussion and conversation with your students about. And because asking questions, it's so important in engaging students, getting them thinking, and practicing answering. I've shown you these before, but there are some great question games, and I've mentioned them with grammar, and also I'd say science activities, or anytime you want to have inquiry or discussions. But these are just fun ways to practice WH questions. Generally, I use this, like the two truths and a lie. We did this one time before, but I think this is a wonderful activity for online and to practice the WH questions. So in this activity, 2 truths and a lie, I'm sure many of you have played it. I think every online class or meeting I've had, we've played 2 truths and a lie, but it is, while it's fun, it's also a great, great ESL activity. So in it, each person, maybe when you first do this, the teacher will start, writes 3 things about themselves. 2 of them are true, 1 is a lie. You can think of anything that you would like. Now, here's the thing. Most of the time, people just go, I have 2 children, I've eaten dog before, I have a pet snake. I know this sounds strange, but they just go, oh, number 1's the lie. That's not the point of this game. The point of this game is to get them asking questions like a detective. They're playing a detective, trying to find out which are the 2 truths and which one's the lie. And that's the point. I want the students thinking of questions. So I would like to practice it with you real quick. Very quickly, for those of you who haven't done this before, it'll be great new information. But what you need to do is, for the first one, I have 2 children. I have 2 children. What questions can you ask me to find out if it's a truth or a lie? What questions can you ask me? Right now, please, in the chat, what questions can you ask me? This is what we want to encourage with our students. This requires a little bit of creative thinking. Oh, some people have never done this great game. Wonderful then. So I want to hear that. I have 2 children. Ask me questions so you can learn more about it. What are some questions you could ask me to see if I'm lying? Oh my goodness. Okay, how many children do you have? Well, I already said I have 2 children. Good. How old are they? One is 6 and one is 2, and they just turned that. Where have your children traveled to? That's an incredibly clever question. And I love it when students ask these kind of questions, because then if I'm lying, I have to be very, very clever to come up with a lie. Where have my children traveled to? Oh, Korea, China, and the United States. How old are they? Good there. I said that one already. Very good. Okay. Now, I'm not going to reveal if it's a truth or a lie. What I do now is I go to the second one. So number 2, I have eaten dog before. What questions can you ask me to see if this is a truth or if it's a lie? And I would recommend, because a lot of the science questions are far more WH questions. So think of WH questions. So the statement is, I have eaten dog. What question? Ooh, very good question. What was the flavor? How did it taste? Very gamey. You know, like if you've ever had rabbit, any of those types of meats. It didn't smell very good in my mind. Where did you eat it? I ate it in South Korea. It's an old custom. It's not really widely done, but it's kind of a unique thing that was far more popular in the past. But most of my Korean friends don't like it and think it's very disgusting, but I was like, this is unique. I want to try it. How long did it take you to cook it? Well, I did not cook my own dog. There's actually special restaurants that will have different meals for it. And they consider eating dog, it's not like just because it tastes good. It's very energizing and gives you kind of good energy. Let's move to the last one real quick. I have a pet snake. Ask me just 1, 2 questions about seeing if that's true or not. I have a pet snake. Someone asked me earlier, why do you have a pet snake? Because I like snakes. Is that a bad question or a bad answer? Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, someone here is being a very good detective. How often does the snake need to eat? That's a very high level question. And how long? I don't know. A week? It takes a snake a week to eat. Does it make a good pet to have in your home? Yes, it stays in its cage all the time. You're afraid of them? All right, well, I think I've given away what I now sometimes do with my students, if I have time, is I let them choose which one do you think is the lie, and then why. Why do you think that's a lie? I want them to explain themselves. Right now, we don't have the time, but if anybody got it from my answer, yeah, I don't have a pet snake. I'm afraid of snakes. I don't understand people who keep them as pets. I think that's a unique pet to have. But yes, ever since I was a kid, I've always been afraid of them. So again, the point of this game isn't just to find the right answer, right? That's the fun part for the kids. But the lesson, what's coming out of it, is all the questions they ask. And I want more and more questions. It doesn't matter if they're good questions or bad, but just getting them to ask those questions. Here is another activity. I call this the Jeopardy game, another great activity for encouraging your students to form questions. For those of you who aren't familiar with the game Jeopardy, all you have to do is you give the answer. So right here, I have 3 answers: Spain, blue, 1982. Now what the students need to do is think of the question for this answer. So let's try that. Number one, Spain. What do you think the question is? My answer is Spain. What do you think the question is? Where were you born? I was born in the United States. I was not born in Spain. Very good question though, right? I don't care if you get the right question or not. It's just that you're asking them. Any others? What do you think about Spain? Where did you get married? Also very good ones. This is a tricky one, and I sometimes do that because if I give easy answers, they get the question very quickly. The answer to this one is where my family's from. All my ancestors are from Spain. Where did you travel? That's another good question, right? And again, it's not my question, but I don't care. You're asking questions. That's what I wanted to encourage with the students. I won't go on to the next two because I want to make sure we have enough time to look at the other material. But these, again, these are great games to get the students asking questions. And for this Interactive Science Plus book, if anything, it is far more of a question-based book. Someone just wrote the question for Spain, where was Pablo Picasso from? That's a great question. That is a very good one. Okay, now I would like to look at the Interactive Science book. With this book, it is sectioned into the three main science fields. I'm sure you, for those of you who saw the video before the webinar started, that this is based off Canada and the United States science curriculum. So the sections are, you know, life science, physical science, earth and space science. Now, I probably repeat this way too much, but these book series have always had these great resources, you know, the teacher's manual, the teaching lessons. I'll be honest, when I was an in-classroom teacher, I did not use them as much. And now that I do a lot of online work, I regret it because some of these materials are really, really good and can be helpful. And you can take it and change things if you need to, but at least these lesson plans, like I told you, look how much work someone put into making that. You know, they at least give you a good idea to start with. And the teacher's manual. You notice I've been talking a lot about questions. It's about asking questions. You know, as a teacher, I might be worried, like, what if I can't think of the right questions to ask them about this material? Don't worry. That's what the teacher's manual is for, where it has so many great questions to start discussions with your students. So again, it's the word of this webinar, questions. Step one, before you start reading, we gotta ask the students lots of questions. It has many outcomes. While the goal is, of course, to encourage the students to speak, it also helps you understand what their current knowledge of the subject is, right? How much do they know about it, and how are their language skills with it? I always say, again, having the right answer isn't as important as the speaking practice, right? I'm not trying to see and judge them on what they know about the scientific topic, but I just want to have an understanding where they are and get them speaking. So here we have our first unit. I believe you actually saw this unit presented in the online video. So we have it. And as you notice the page, it's almost tons of questions. The texts are always questions. So this little part up here, the think part, there are these parts where they're asking questions before any material was read. And it's not to judge the students. It's not to make the students feel dumb because they don't know a piece of information. It's not. It's to get them thinking. So if I say, oh, what is a biome, right? That's our first question up there in the corner. What is a biome? It's okay if they don't know it, but I want them to guess. Oh, and maybe you can look at the word bio. What does bio mean? What do you think? If they don't know, fine. That's the part of the chapter, but you're just getting them thinking. Hence why there's a light bulb and the word think next to it. So, and here with the thinks question, I got this straight out of the teacher's manuals. What other names are there for the earth? You know, describe nature in your area. What is the environment like in other parts of the world? All these discussion questions or discussion topics are all within the teacher's manual. So you don't have to think of them yourself and kind of prepare them all before class. The book will help prepare you for that. So step 2 is kind of silly. I know I put vocabulary preview. And I just say introduce the vocabulary. I wasn't going to take time to show any vocabulary activities. There are so many of them. I think those are the most activities that teachers are familiar with. Vocab activities, vocab games. We've seen them. There's so many online. It's whatever you like and what works for you. But all you have to do is Google, vocab preview or vocab games, vocab activities, and you'll just have activity after activity. But I do think in this case, with these higher level vocab words, they do need to be previewed beforehand. And then when you move into the reading, again, more and more questions. I'm telling you, I would love for you to get the teacher's manual. That's all we're doing here with the students. The text, you can read it, you can move on, but that's not good enough. We're asking the questions to help connect information, to help get deeper level thinking in here. And also, you might have to tailor the questions, depending on your students' language levels. You might have to, choose easier words for them. But again, all our questions that you need are within the teacher's manual. So now I often have my own activity that I do with kids. It's usually a grammar activity, but I believe with reading comprehension, it does help with deeper thinking. And that's simply making the question, kind of like we did on that game before. That's why that game is a good class warm-up. But it's using statements from the text. You have students then make a question form. So for example, here's our reading text. The first sentence. Here's the first sentence in our reading. It says, scientists sometimes call Earth Biosphere 1. Now what I want my students to do is take that statement, scientists sometimes call Earth Biosphere 1, and change it into a question. Please right now in the chat, what is the question form of this sentence? Scientists sometimes call Earth Biosphere 1. If I wanted to have that and change that into a question, what would that be? And I see, I want to make sure we have enough time to go through everything. Exactly. So I'm going to oh, pardon me. Oh, sorry, pardon me, technical issues. Yes, the question is, what do scientists sometimes call Earth? That's it. Now, I think what's happening when we do this, again, I have not read research on this, but when we create the question form, when we change it from statement to a question, it does require us to think a little bit more deeply about the information. And it's my hope that when I do this with the students, that then that increases the chances of them remembering it because they're having to think a little bit more deeply. So another example here, So one of our sentences says biomes are very large areas that have particular kinds of plants and animals. What the students need to do is take that statement, switch it into a question. What are biomes? And again, this activity, I'll leave off with saying this one thing. By doing this activity, by having them practice changing the forms, yeah, it's a great grammar activity, don't get me wrong. But also I think it's making them, it's requiring them to think more deeply about the statement and about the question and about the information in it. And now as we move on, this here is a lesson 2. These 2 pages, if you use the lessons that are provided by the teacher's guide, you could get an entire lesson out of these 2 pages. I'm going to go over it just briefly because obviously you can see it's now we've become vocab focused. We need to cover that higher level vocab. And there's lots of different activities. You know, they do have crosswords in here, word connects, gap fills, fill in the blanks. So there are different activities, but you can see that this is after the reading. So there needs to be some type of introduction to the vocab beforehand. And then moving on into the comprehension check, I think this one is a little bit more unique. The questions can be very challenging in the comprehension check. And one thing I recommend, I've seen most teachers do this in their regular class, so in their normal English class or in their normal Spanish class and their Spanish literature classes. Many teachers will have an activity of report where the answer came from. And what that means is, instead of just having students read the comprehension check and fill in the blanks or circle the correct answer, what you have them do is tell you where that answer came from, right? I'm sure we've all done this in our native English or native speaking classes, but we can also do it in our second language classes. You need to connect the questions to the text. So I always, even with my first grade students, I would have them show me where they got the answer from. Have students show where they got the answer from in the text. With my kids, I had two different forms that I do. One would be like this, that on the comprehension check, they would have to write the paragraph. So that's like P1, paragraph 1. This answer came from paragraph 1, sentence 5. That's a great reading comprehension skill to build in your students. We do it in our native classes, English or Spanish classes. We should also do it in our second language classes. Another way, this is the way actually I do it more often because it's the easiest way, is just in the writing itself. So like you've been reading it, you look for that one question. So remember that question was question number 3, and it said, which is not one of the major groups of Earth biomes? Well, the student, they see the question, they go read in the text, and then, oh, they find it. There's that sentence where my answer is. And they write 3. I usually have my students like write the number. The question was question 3. Where they found it in the story, they wrote 3, and they either put like number 3 or 3 and circle it. That way they're always connecting where they got the answer from. They're showing me where they got the answer from. And this will be, it shows that they either truly understand it or truly guessed. That's what will happen with this activity. And then lastly is the review. The reviews after 4 different, 4 lessons connected on the same subject matter. And this is where we see more of the 4 skills getting involved here, right? Even in this review, we have all 4 skills. There's reading, there's listening, there's writing, and there's speaking. So again, that's a big difference with this second edition Interactive Science Plus book, is there's so many of the 4 skills being incorporated. Yes, and I would like to, someone just put in the chat that underlining the answers in the text with a different color, that's also a good idea. Just whatever, I'm sure there's many other ways to do it, but just somewhere where the students are showing that the answer on this comprehension check came from this part of the story or this part of the text. So as we kind of come to a close here, I reiterated this before, and I would like to say it once more, that we've experienced that around the world, the criticism of teaching and learning has been that we just are trying to cover so much content in such a little bit of time. I think with this interactive science book, by having those 3 lessons per unit, the students get such a deeper understanding of the content. And to prevent them from getting bored, you have all those supplementary materials. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to show you the app in detail. The site is under construction right now. But there you have videos, audio, activities you can do. And in my mind, it's that video that's in the app or on the hybrid CD, that's what I had also used to help prime the students in the flipped class or flipped lesson if I did that with them. And I just wanted to mention, Language World, I believe, in the chat boxes, they put the links to where you can download those apps from either, from Apple or from Google Play. And speaking of extra resources and where you can find them, right here, I've given you both, I've given the link, you can see it at the top right corner, to Language World. They are the publishers, and on their website, there's just so much content that can help you when you use these books and this materials. As you can see, that they provide syllabi, answer keys, tests, audio, even some downloadable content that you can print out and use. So I really recommend going there and checking that out. Also, we are going to be having future webinars. Pardon me, I'm trying to control everything here. So next month we'll have 2 webinars that we're going to be looking at drama with English. If you've been with me in the past webinars, there are times where I've talked about how you can use drama within your classroom to improve English skills and to completely keep the kids engaged, because they're very, very fun. But also at the end of October, on the 22nd or the 23rd, depending where you are in the world, we'll be looking at Grammar Q+. Previously, I did a webinar on Grammar Q, which is for beginner learners, but we're going to be looking at activities that you can do with the older kids in grammar to keep grammar fun for them. And if you're interested in the past webinars, since I do talk about them a lot, and I try not to always just create the same webinar, have the same activities, I do like to review a lot. And if you too would like to review, I would recommend going to either, you can find the YouTube videos or on Facebook, or also there's an Instagram link to where you can go and recycle those videos and learn what you need to learn. Well, it does look like I've reached 8 o'clock. I went right to the full time, but I did talk about maybe having about 5 minutes. If you have any questions, please, I don't mind what they are. I would love to hear you think. This is the only problem I have with a webinar, that I can't see you. I can't talk to you in person. It can be frustrating for me at sometimes. So please, if you have any questions about this, put it into the chat and I'd love to discuss it with you here. So I would like to say thank you once again. Thank you for joining us. I know some people, it's got to be, what, 9 or 10 o'clock right now. So you've been with us when it's very, very late. I'm always impressed the amount of people that come to these on your own time to improve your knowledge, to learn more, and to try to grow as a teacher. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Try to stay safe, stay healthy. I'm going to stay online for about 2 minutes. I might just be sitting here quietly, but if you have any questions, I'm here for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, about a few minutes, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Go relax, have fun, and I hope to see you in our next webinars in October. Take care. Bye.